Li Ta-wan felt an uncomfortable chill run down his spine as he sat in the Grand Council chambers. Something was wrong. The other representatives were too quiet, their alien faces unreadable as they gathered for what had been called an emergency session. After 5 years as Earth's High Commissioner to the Galactic Council, he had learned to trust his instincts. The massive chamber stretched upward into darkness, its ancient stone walls carved with the histories of 1,000 species. Floating platforms held representatives from across the galaxy, their environmental bubbles glowing softly in the dim light. In all his years of service, Li had never seen every single seat occupied. The council speaker, a towering being of crystalline structure, raised its glowing appendages for silence. "We gather today to address a grave threat to galactic stability," it announced, its translator converting the musical tones into standard galactic. The rapid expansion and technological advancement of species 47,892, designation humans, has exceeded all projected models. Li's hands gripped the edge of his platform. This wasn't a normal session. This was a tribunal. He reached slowly for his emergency transmitter, keeping his movements casual as the speaker continued. In the mere century since their discovery of faster-than-light travel, humans have colonized 47 worlds. Their military capabilities have grown exponentially. Their ability to adapt and incorporate other species' technologies poses an unprecedented risk to the established order. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Li's fingers found the transmitter's activation switch as he scanned the faces around him. There was no sympathy there, no allies to be found. Even the Aetheri, who had been their strongest trading partners, turned away from his gaze. "The council has deliberated in private," the speaker announced. "A vote will now be held on implementation of Containment Protocol 7. Li's blood ran cold. He had accessed enough classified files to know what that meant. The systematic elimination of a species deemed too dangerous to exist within the galactic community. His hand trembled as he pressed the transmitter's emergency signal. Those in favor. Every appendage, tentacle, and limb in the chamber raised in unison. Li's message began transmitting. Emergency code black. Council voting on Containment Protocol 7. All colonies prepare for immediate. The doors burst open. Council security forces, their armor gleaming, stormed into the chamber. Li saw the plasma cuffs coming and tried to jump to another platform, but their targeting systems were too fast. Energy bands wrapped around his wrists, sending him crashing to his knees. "The vote is unanimous," the speaker declared. "Let the containment begin." Across human space, the carefully planned massacre unfolded with terrifying precision. The council had spent years preparing, placing weapon platforms in seemingly innocent cargo containers, hiding fleets in dimensional pockets near human worlds. Now they struck without warning. On New Sol, the pride of human colonization, Governor Kim Ji-ah was reviewing agricultural reports when the sky turned red. The orbital defense platforms, supposedly the colony's ultimate protection, went dark in seconds, sabotaged from within by disguised council agents. "Ma'am, we're detecting multiple ships emerging from dimensional space," her aide shouted, face pale with terror. "They're everywhere." Jaya rushed to the windows of the governor's palace, watching in horror as massive council warships emerged above the gleaming towers of New Sol. For a moment, they hung there like dark stars, beautiful and terrible. Then the bombardment began. Plasma beams sliced through residential districts. Antimatter torpedoes detonated over industrial centers. Kinetic rods fell like rain, each impact releasing the energy of a small nuclear weapon. The city's shields, already compromised, collapsed under the onslaught. "Get everyone to the bunkers," Jaya ordered, but she knew it was too late. The council's attack was too well planned, too thorough. They weren't just targeting military installations, they were trying to eliminate every trace of human presence. Similar scenes played out across human space. The colony of New Darwin vanished in a flash of artificial supernovas. The mining outposts in the Centauri system were vaporized by exotic weapons that turned matter itself against the defenders. The research stations orbiting Ta City witnessed their own atmospheres being weaponized against them. Back in the council chambers, Lee Ta-1 was forced to watch it all on massive holographic displays. The security forces wanted him to see the fruits of his failure to warn his people. But as he watched the death toll climb into the millions, he saw something the council had missed. Not every colony went dark. Not every defense system failed. Here and there, human ships managed to jump to safety, bunkers deep beneath the surface of worlds sheltered survivors. And Earth itself, humanity's cradle, remained ominously silent. The council celebrated their victory too early. They had studied humanity's weapons, their shields, their known capabilities. But they had forgotten the most important lesson of human history. Humanity was at its most dangerous when pushed to the brink of extinction. As Lee was led away to his cell, he saw a final report scroll across the displays, a message from the fleet attacking Earth. The council ships had emerged from dimensional space expecting an easy victory. Instead, they found themselves facing defenses that shouldn't have existed, weapons that hadn't been in any database. The massacre had begun, but it wouldn't end the way the council planned. In their arrogance, they had awakened something far more dangerous than the threat they sought to contain: humanity's unstoppable fury. A single tear rolled down Lee's cheek, but he was smiling. The council thought they were writing humanity's final chapter. Instead, they had just written their own. The emergency alarms on the bridge of the HSS Dauntless screamed to life, their piercing wails cutting through the normal hum of operations. Rear Admiral Park Sung-ho was already moving before his crew could react, his hands flying over the command console with practiced speed. "Sir, what's happening?" his executive officer asked, confusion clear on his face. "We haven't received any emergency signals." "Exactly," Park replied, his eyes never leaving the displays. The council communication channels just went completely silent. All of them. At the same time. He had spent years studying council protocols, looking for patterns others dismissed. This was wrong. This was the kind of silence that came before an attack. The Fourth Fleet hung in space near the Arcturus colony, 27 warships strong. They were supposed to be conducting routine patrol exercises. Park had deliberately positioned them near the edge of the system, against standard doctrine. His subordinates had questioned this decision, but years of serving under Park had taught them to trust his instincts. "All ships, emergency jump protocol Alpha 7, Park commanded. "Now." No acknowledgement needed, just jump. The bridge crew scrambled to comply. They had drilled this scenario countless times, despite complaints about Park's excessive preparation for unlikely scenarios. Now those drills paid off. Within 30 seconds, the entire fleet engaged their jump drives. They vanished into hyperspace just as the first Council warships emerged from dimensional pockets. The enemy's carefully planned ambush found empty space where the Fourth Fleet should have been. In the swirling chaos of hyperspace, Park watched his tactical displays with grim satisfaction. Behind his fleet, he could see the energy signatures of massive weapons being unleashed on the Arcturus colony. His hands clenched into fists. He had saved his fleet, but he couldn't save everyone. "Sir," his communications officer called out, voice shaking. "We're picking up distress calls. Civilian ships, dozens of them. They'd managed to launch before the attack." Park didn't hesitate. "Plot intercept courses. We're taking them with us." It would slow them down, make them more vulnerable, but he wouldn't abandon civilians to the Council's mercy. The fleet dropped briefly out of hyperspace, their weapon systems ready. They found colonial evacuation ships, their holds packed with terrified survivors, being pursued by Council interceptors. The Fourth Fleet's response was devastating. Years of Park's relentless training showed as his ships executed perfect attack patterns, destroying the pursuers before they could even raise their shields. "Get those civilians aboard the cargo carriers," Park ordered. "We jump again in 5 minutes." He had already chosen their destination, a region of space so empty that ancient star charts simply marked it as the void. No one would look for them there. Meanwhile, on Earth, another preparation was paying off. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Han Du-Yul stood in humanity's most advanced military command center. Like Park, he had been called paranoid. Like Park, that paranoia was about to save countless lives. Council fleet emerging from dimensional space, an operator announced. Multiple capital ships detected. Energy readings suggest they're charging primary weapons. Han allowed himself a small smile. Activate the quantum shield grid. Across Earth's surface, hidden generators hummed to life. Technology that officially didn't exist created overlapping fields of protection that not even Earth's allies knew about. The Council fleet opened fire, expecting to find a helpless planet. Instead, their attacks splashed harmlessly against shields that operated on principles their sensors couldn't even detect. In the command center, Han watched their confusion with grim satisfaction. "Send the response package," he ordered. Earth's orbital defense platforms revealed their true nature, shedding the disguises that had made them appear as simple communication satellites. Advanced weapon systems, developed in secret over decades, powered up. The Council fleet found itself caught in a crossfire of technologies they had never seen before. Ships began exploding as quantum-tipped missiles phased through their shields. Gravity weapons turned their own mass against them. Within minutes, the mighty invasion force was reduced to scattered debris. Han turned to his staff. "Get me a secure channel to all surviving military commands. It's time to show the Council why you should never corner a species that turned its own planet's core into a power source." In the void of dark space, Park's fleet regrouped with other survivors. Colonial ships arrived in ones and twos, bearing horrible stories of destruction. But they also brought hope. Tales of colonies that had survived, of hidden bunkers that sheltered thousands, of defensive systems that had worked when they shouldn't have. Park stood on his bridge, watching the ragtag fleet of survivors grow. "Send a coded burst transmission to Earth," he ordered. "Tell them the Fourth Fleet stands ready." The response came hours later, encrypted in a way only Park would understand. Earth had survived. Humanity's homeworld was not only intact, but had bloodied the Council's nose. And now, under the leadership of generals like Han, they were preparing to do what humanity did best: survive, adapt, and fight back. Park looked out at his fleet, at the civilian ships they'd rescued, at the determined faces of his crew. The Council thought they were eliminating a threat. Instead, they had created something far worse, a humanity with nothing left to lose and everything to avenge. "Send to all ships," Park commanded, his voice firm. "The real war begins now." The Hess Shadow Dancer slipped through space like a ghost, its experimental stealth systems making it virtually invisible to even the most advanced sensors. Captain Yu Meirei stood on her bridge, watching the massive Council fleet through enhanced viewing screens. They were hunting for human survivors, arrogant in their superiority. They had no idea they were about to become the hunted. "Status on the quantum torpedoes," she whispered, though she knew the enemy couldn't hear her. The habit of silence was deeply ingrained after months of stealth operations. "Armed and ready, Captain," her weapons officer reported. "All 4 prototype units are showing green." The torpedoes were the result of a secret weapons program, developed by humans who had always suspected this day might come. Meirei studied the enemy formation. 3 Dreadnought-class capital ships formed the core of their fleet, surrounded by smaller escort vessels. The Council always used the same patterns, followed the same tactical doctrines they'd used for millennia. It made them predictable. "Target the command ships," she ordered. "Calculate firing solutions that will look like internal explosions. Let them think their own technology betrayed them." The Shadow Dancer crept closer, its revolutionary engines operating in perfect silence. The quantum torpedoes were unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. They didn't travel through normal space. They created microscopic tunnels through reality itself, emerging inside their targets. Fire. 4 streaks of blue light, barely visible even to enhanced sensors, shot from the Shadow Dancer's launch tubes. The Council fleet had no warning. The first torpedo materialized in the engineering section of the lead dreadnought, its quantum field disrupting the very fabric of spacetime. The massive ship simply ceased to exist, its matter converted to energy in a silent flash of light. The other 2 capital ships suffered similar fates seconds later, their destructions looking exactly like catastrophic power core failures. The escort ships fell into chaos, their rigid command structure shattered by the loss of their leaders. "Send the signal," Mayray commanded. From the darkness of space, 5 more stealth destroyers decloaked. The Council escorts found themselves surrounded by ships they couldn't detect, armed with weapons they couldn't understand. Meanwhile, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean on Earth, Dr. Choi Yunji was about to reveal humanity's greatest secret. In a heavily protected facility, she stood before a gathering of military leaders, including General Han Du-Yul himself. Project Phoenix wasn't just about developing new weapons, she explained, her hands moving across a holographic display. It was about understanding the fundamental principles behind Council technology and finding ways to surpass them. The display showed a massive orbital platform, unlike anything humanity had publicly revealed. The Council believes their technology is superior because it's older, more refined. What they don't understand is that their advancement stopped millennia ago. They became comfortable, complacent. She brought up detailed schematics. Phoenix combines everything we've learned. Their dimensional technology, their energy manipulation, their gravity control. We studied it all. But we didn't just copy it. We improved it. We found connections they never imagined. The assembled leaders watched in amazement as she demonstrated the platform's capabilities. It could generate shields that adapted to any weapon. It could tap into the quantum fabric of space itself for power. Most importantly, it could be built using resources the Council didn't know humans could access. "How soon can we deploy?" General Han asked, his eyes fixed on the display. "The first platform is ready now," Yunji revealed. "We built it in secret, piece by piece, disguised as orbital debris. It's already in position above Earth, and we can build more." In space, Mayray's fleet had finished their work. The Council escort ships were disabled or destroyed, their crews captured for interrogation. The Shadow Dancer's communications officer received an encrypted transmission from Earth. "Captain," he called out, "Project Phoenix has been activated. We're being ordered to rendezvous with the 4th Fleet. Something big is coming." Mayray smiled as she looked at the wreckage of the Council ships. They had thought humanity would be an easy target, a young species to be culled before it became a threat. Instead, they had awakened a giant that had been preparing for this moment for decades. "Send word to all stealth vessels," she ordered. "The real war is about to begin. And this time, we're fighting it our way." As her ships vanished back into the darkness of space, the first Phoenix platform above Earth began to power up. Its activation sent ripples through spacetime that Council sensors would detect, but by then, it would be too late. Humanity was done hiding its true strength. The Council had started this war believing they were facing a primitive species. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. In labs and secret facilities across human space, other projects like Phoenix were being revealed. The countless contingency plans, the hidden weapons, the revolutionary technologies, all of them were ready. Humanity's hidden strength was not just in its weapons or technology. It was in its persistence, its creativity, its refusal to accept limitations. The Council had made a fatal mistake. They had given humanity a reason to stop holding back. Darkness shrouded the ruins of what had once been a Council supply depot. Colonel Kang Da-hyun moved silently through the shadows, his combat suit's adaptive camouflage making him nearly invisible. Around him, his guerrilla squad moved with practiced precision. They looked nothing like a proper military unit. Their equipment was a mix of stolen Council tech and modified human gear. "Target in sight," whispered his scout through their secure comm channel. "Supply convoy approaching. 6 heavy transports, minimal escort." Da-hyun smiled beneath his mask. The Council never learned. They still believed their superior technology made them invulnerable to primitive human tactics. That arrogance had already cost them dearly. "Remember," he vocalized to his team, "we hit the lead and rear vehicles simultaneously. No energy weapons, projectiles only. They'll be expecting energy signatures." His guerrilla force had perfected the art of asymmetric warfare. While the Council searched for energy readings and high-tech signatures, Da-hyun's people used modified railguns and kinetic weapons. The Council's advanced shields were calibrated for plasma and energy attacks. They were surprisingly vulnerable to good old-fashioned physical impacts. The convoy appeared, right on schedule. Council ships were nothing if not predictable. Their automated defense systems scanned for threats, but found nothing. Da-hyun's team didn't register on their sensors any more than the surrounding debris did. 3, 2, 1. Execute. Synchronized railgun fire erupted from multiple positions. The lead transport's shields flared uselessly as hypersonic projectiles tore through its engines. The rear transport suffered the same fate seconds later. The convoy was trapped. Second phase, go. His troops emerged from cover, using grappling lines to board the disabled transports. The Council escort ships finally reacted, but they were firing as shadows. Da-hyun's people were already inside the transport's shield perimeters. Meanwhile, hundreds of light years away, a much larger battle was unfolding. Fleet Admiral Song Ji-woo stood on the bridge of the HSS Vengeance, Earth's newest flagship. Before her, holographic displays showed the gathered might of the human defense force. Over 200 warships, backed by the newly deployed Phoenix platforms. "All ships report ready, Admiral," her flag captain announced. "New Seoul defense grid is still active. The Council garrison won't know we're coming until we're right on top of them." Ji-woo nodded grimly. New Seoul had been one of humanity's proudest achievements before the massacre. Now it would become a symbol of their revenge. "Begin the operation," she ordered. "May God have mercy on them, because we won't." The human fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. The Council garrison responded exactly as expected. They followed their standard doctrine, forming defensive lines and powering up their weapons. They outnumbered the human fleet, but numbers weren't everything. "Launch Phoenix Strike," Ji-woo commanded. The orbital platforms activated, releasing waves of quantum disruption that shut down the Council's dimensional communications. No calls for reinforcement would reach their allies. The Battle of New Seoul began in earnest. Human ships, incorporating both stolen Council tech and new innovations, tore into the enemy formation. Phoenix platforms provided targeting data that made Council shields nearly useless. Ji-woo's forces had trained for months for this moment, while the Council garrison had grown complacent. Back in Council space, Da-hyun's raid was reaching its conclusion. His teams had stripped the transports of valuable cargo and planted charges throughout the vessels. The Council would find nothing but wreckage when they investigated. "All teams, extract," he ordered. His people vanished into the darkness as silently as they had appeared. Behind them, precisely timed explosions destroyed the convoy, adding more debris to the graveyard of Council ships that his guerrilla forces had created. "Next target," his executive officer asked as they boarded their stealth shuttle. "Ammunition depot in the Proxima sector," Da-hyun replied. "The Council's learning to escort their convoys better, so we'll hit them at the source instead." Above New Seoul, the battle reached its climax. Ji-woo's fleet had suffered losses, but the Council garrison was in ruins. Human Marines were already landing to reclaim the surface. After months of preparation, humanity's first major offensive was a success. "Send word to Earth," Ji-woo ordered. "New Seoul is ours again. The liberation has begun." The news spread quickly through human space and beyond. The Council had thought humanity broken, reduced to scattered survivors. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that fought unlike anything they'd seen in millennia of warfare. Da Hyun's guerrillas struck from shadows, using tactics the Council had dismissed as obsolete. Ji Woo's fleets combined Council technology with human innovation in ways that shocked their enemies. Together, they represented humanity's response to genocide, not just survival, but evolution. The Battle of New Seoul marked a turning point. The Council could no longer pretend they were simply containing a minor threat. They had created an enemy that understood their weaknesses, exploited their complacency, and refused to fight by their rules. As his team prepared for their next raid, Da Hyun received word of the victory at New Seoul. He shared the news with his troops, seeing the fire in their eyes grow stronger. The coming storm was gathering strength, and the Council had no idea how to stop it. Ambassador Ba Soo-min stood before the Etheri High Council, her voice steady despite the weight of her mission. The crystalline beings towered over her, their bodies refracting light in complex patterns that conveyed their emotional states. Right now, they showed signs of deep turmoil. "You've seen the evidence," she said, gesturing to the holographic displays showing Council atrocities. The massacre wasn't about containing a threat. It was about maintaining power through genocide. The Etheri Prime Crystal pulsed with dark colors of distress. "We were deceived. The Council told us humans were developing planet-killer weapons. They showed us falsified evidence. And now you know the truth," Soo-min pressed. "The Council fears change. They fear any species that might challenge their authority. How long before they decide the Etheri are too powerful as well?" The chamber hummed with the crystalline equivalent of murmurs. The Etheri were among the oldest Council members, but they had maintained their capacity for independent thought. Unlike many species, they hadn't fallen into blind obedience to Council doctrine. "The humans offer partnership, not submission," Soo-min continued. "We want allies, not servants. Together, we can create something better than the Council's stagnant empire." In orbit above the Etheri homeworld, Admiral Song's fleet waited quietly. They had come not as conquerors, but as protectors, offering the Etheri security against Council retaliation. It was a bold gamble. Bringing a human fleet into the territory of a Council race could have been seen as an act of war. The Prime Crystal's colors shifted to decisive patterns. "The Etheri stand with humanity. We will no longer be part of the Council's lies." The news spread rapidly through Council space. The Etheri weren't just any member race. They were weapons manufacturers, shield designers, masters of energy manipulation. Their defection sent shockwaves through the galactic community. The Nexus Collective was next. Soo-min met their representatives in secret, on a neutral world far from Council oversight. The Collective were living computers, networks of organic processors that had evolved beyond individual consciousness. They had already detected the flaws in Council logic. "Your species adapts," the Collective's primary node stated. "You innovate. You challenge established patterns." The Council's response was mathematically incorrect. Genocide is an inefficient solution to perceived competition. With each new ally, humanity's strength grew. The Etheri brought their advanced energy technology. The Nexus Collective contributed their unmatched computational abilities. Other species began to watch, to question, to wonder if the Council's path was truly the only way. Then came the Battle of Arcturus. The Council had gathered their main armada, determined to crush the growing rebellion before more species could defect. Over 3,000 ships, representing the combined might of dozens of loyal races, prepared to end the human threat once and for all. Admiral Song stood on her flagship's bridge, now accompanied by Etheri crystal ships and Nexus computational vessels. The combined fleet was smaller than the Council's armada, but numbers had never been the deciding factor in this war. "The Council expects us to fight conventionally," she told her commanders during the final briefing. "They expect us to match fleet against fleet, to follow the same tactical doctrines they've used for millennia. We're not going to do that." The battle began with a surprise. The Council armada emerged from dimensional space, weapons charged, ready to overwhelm their opponents with superior numbers. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow their rules. Human stealth ships, upgraded with Aetheri crystal tech, struck from unexpected angles. Nexus vessels predicted and countered Council maneuvers before they happened. Phoenix platforms created zones where Council weapons simply stopped working. Ambassador Su Min watched the battle from a secure command center, alongside representatives from their allied species. The Council Armada's rigid formation began to break apart as human guerrilla tactics, combined with allied technology, threw their carefully planned strategies into chaos. They cannot adapt. The Nexus primary node observed. Their tactical patterns have remained unchanged for too long. They have forgotten how to innovate. The battle reached its turning point when Admiral Song unveiled humanity's latest weapon, a device that turned the Council's own dimensional technology against them. Dozens of their ships found themselves trapped in pocket dimensions, unable to escape or fight back. All ships, execute final attack pattern. Song commanded. The combined fleet moved with perfect coordination, Aetheri crystal ships providing shields while human vessels delivered the killing blows. The Council Armada, already in disarray, began to break apart. When it was over, the space around Arcturus was filled with debris from what had once been the Council's greatest fleet. The surviving ships fled in disorder, their retreat broadcasting a clear message to the galaxy. The Council was not invincible. Su Min's diplomatic channels were flooded with messages from other species, seeking to open negotiations. The Council's grip on power had been built on fear and the illusion of invulnerability. Both were now shattered. The balance of power hasn't just shifted, she told her staff as reports of the victory spread. It's been completely rewritten. The galaxy is changing, and this time, it won't be stopped by fear or tradition. The Battle of Arcturus marked more than just a military victory. It proved that cooperation between species, combining different technologies and tactics, was more powerful than the Council's enforced uniformity. For the first time since the massacre began, the path to victory was clear. Director Yang Mincio stared at the decoded files on her screen, her hands trembling with a mixture of rage and vindication. After months of work, her intelligence team had finally cracked the Council's most secure archives. What they found was more horrifying than anyone had imagined. "Send these to Admiral Song immediately," she ordered her staff. "And get me a direct link to Earth Command. They need to see this now." The files revealed the truth behind the massacre. It hadn't been a unanimous Council decision at all. A group of just 5 ancient species, calling themselves the Eternal Consensus, had manipulated events for millennia. They had orchestrated the downfall of any civilization that showed too much potential for growth. Yang's hologram appeared before the combined military command. The assembled leaders fell silent as she began her presentation. "The Eternal Consensus has existed for over 50,000 years, she explained, displaying ancient records. They don't just fear humanity. They fear change itself. Every major genocide in Council history was their doing. The evidence was damning. The Consensus had falsified data, manipulated other species, and engineered conflicts to maintain their power. Humanity wasn't their first target. They had eliminated 12 other species before Earth was even discovered. They saw our potential for innovation as a threat," Yang continued. "Our ability to adapt and improve their technology terrified them. But they made a crucial mistake. They didn't understand how humans react to attempted extermination." Admiral Song, watching from her flagship, felt a cold anger settle over her. "How many Council members know about this?" "Most are as much victims as we are," Yang replied. "The Consensus used their technology to subtly influence other species, making them more compliant, more accepting of stagnation. But that influence is breaking down now." The push toward the galactic core began the next day. The combined fleet, now including ships from a dozen former Council races, moved with unstoppable momentum. World after world surrendered as Yang's intelligence teams broadcast the truth about the Consensus. On the planet Centaurus, a major council stronghold, the local government surrendered without firing a shot. Their population, learning they had been manipulated for generations, turned against their consensus advisors. "We're not here for conquest," Song announced to each world they reached. "We're here to break the chains you didn't even know you wore." Yang's revelation sparked a revolution across council space. Species that had been content with stagnation for millennia began to question everything. The consensus's careful manipulations, maintained over thousands of years, unraveled in weeks. The human fleet encountered serious resistance at Proxima Station, a major council military hub. The defenders fought fiercely until Yang's team hacked their communications and showed them the truth. The battle ended with former enemies working together to arrest their consensus overlords. Their greatest weapon was secrecy, Yang told her staff as reports of more defections poured in. They convinced everyone that stagnation was stability, that innovation was dangerous. Now that lie is exposed, their power is crumbling. In the Rigel system, an entire council defense fleet switched sides after their commanders saw the evidence. They joined the human advance, their crews eager to make amends for unwittingly serving the consensus's goals. The push continued, unstoppable now. The consensus's attempts to rally resistance failed as more species declared their independence. Their carefully maintained power structure, built on lies and manipulation, collapsed in the face of truth. "We're detecting massive energy signatures from the core worlds," Song's sensors officer reported. "The consensus is gathering their remaining forces for a final stand." Yang's intelligence network confirmed it. The 5 ancient species had retreated to their hereditary worlds, protected by their most advanced technology. They believed their defenses, developed over 50,000 years, would keep them safe. "They still don't understand," Song said during the final planning session. "They think technology alone will save them. They forgot that warfare isn't about who has the best weapons. It's about who can adapt, who can think differently." The combined fleet prepared for the final push. Ships of dozens of designs, representing the liberated species of the galaxy, gathered for the assault. It was no longer just humanity's vengeance. It was the galaxy's revolution against stagnation. Yang worked tirelessly, coordinating intelligence from countless sources. The consensus's defenses were formidable, but they were predictable. They hadn't developed new strategies in thousands of years, believing their existing ones were perfect. "All ships, all allies," Song broadcast to the assembled fleet. "Today we end 50,000 years of manipulation and genocide. Today we prove that evolution cannot be stopped, that progress cannot be contained." The fleet jumped toward the core worlds, carrying with them the hopes of a galaxy ready for change. The consensus had tried to maintain their power by keeping the galaxy in chains. Instead, they had united it against them, creating an alliance of species determined to forge a new future. Yang watched from her command center as the final battle approached. The consensus had triggered humanity's vengeance, but they had achieved something they never intended. They had awakened the entire galaxy to the possibility of change. The Battle of Illuminar began with a flash that lit up half the galaxy. The consensus had activated their ultimate weapon, a device that could alter the fundamental constants of space-time itself. They expected it to stop the combined fleet in its tracks. Instead, they watched in horror as the human ships and their allies pushed through, their shields adapted to handle even this impossible weapon. Li Tawan felt the battle from his prison cell deep within Illuminar's crystalline spires. The entire station shook as humanity's vengeance finally reached the heart of council power. For months he had endured imprisonment, watching helplessly as his warnings about the council's corruption proved true. The first breakthrough came 12 hours into the battle. Ambassador Su Min's diplomatic corps had secretly contacted sympathetic factions within Illuminar. As the combined fleet engaged the outer defenses, internal resistance sparked across the station. Prison guards, learning the truth about who they served, turned against their masters. Li's cell door opened to reveal a familiar face, Colonel Kang's guerrilla forces had infiltrated the station months ago, preparing for this moment. "Welcome back to the war, Commissioner," Kang said with a grim smile. Admiral Song's fleet executed their battle plan with precision. Phoenix platforms neutralized Illuminar's most powerful defenses. Aetheri crystal ships pierced holes in its supposedly impenetrable shields. The Nexus Collective's living computers countered every defensive strategy before it could fully deploy. The consensus leadership, in their desperation, revealed their true nature. Their bodies shifted into forms of pure energy, ancient technology making them nearly godlike in power. They had hidden their evolution from their own people, maintaining the fiction of being merely long-lived biological entities. "You cannot stop us," their combined voices boomed across all frequencies. "We are eternal. We are perfection." Song's response was characteristically human. Perfection doesn't need to hide behind lies. The fleet launched their final assault, using technology developed by combining the knowledge of a dozen species. The consensus's energy forms found themselves trapped, unable to escape or exercise their power. Lee made his way to the station's central chamber, where he had once stood as Earth's representative. Now he stood there again, watching as the combined forces of the liberated galaxy brought the consensus to justice. The trial lasted a single day. The evidence was overwhelming. 50,000 years of manipulation, genocide, and suppression of advancement. Species after species testified about opportunities stolen, innovations suppressed, and populations quietly eliminated for showing too much potential. "In the name of every species that has suffered under your rule," Lee pronounced, "this tribunal finds you guilty. Your punishment will not be death. That would be too simple. You will live, powerless, to watch as the galaxy evolves beyond your control." The formation of the Galactic Alliance began immediately. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the same chamber where the Council had once voted for humanity's extinction. The irony was not lost on anyone present. Admiral Song's address to the first session was brief but powerful. "We stand here not as conquerors, but as equals. Humanity doesn't want to rule. We want to explore, to innovate, to grow. And we want to do it together with all of you." The Alliance's founding principles were simple. No species would be held back, no innovation suppressed, no civilization deemed too dangerous to exist. The combined knowledge and technology of all member races would be shared, creating opportunities for advancement beyond anything the Council had allowed. Lee watched as former enemies became partners in the greatest cooperative endeavor in galactic history. Humanity's adaptability and innovation, combined with the ancient knowledge of other species, sparked a renaissance of development and discovery. The consensus, stripped of their energy forms and confined to biological bodies, were forced to watch as their carefully maintained order crumbled. In its place arose something they had feared, but never truly understood: controlled chaos, the engine of evolution and progress. "The galaxy is changing," Lee told the assembled Alliance representatives. "Not because of humanity alone, but because all of us chose to embrace change instead of fear it." As the first session of the Alliance concluded, Admiral Song stood with her fellow fleet commanders, Human, Aetheri, Nexus, and dozens of others. Their combined forces would now serve as peacekeepers, ensuring that no species would ever again face extinction for the crime of advancement. The human fleet began its journey home to Earth, but the galaxy they traveled through was transformed. Where the Council had maintained stagnation, new discoveries and innovations flowered. Species that had been enemies now worked together, combining their knowledge in ways the consensus had forbidden. The chronicle of humanity's vengeance ended not with destruction, but with creation. The massacre that was meant to end humanity's potential instead unleashed the potential of an entire galaxy. As Lee watched the new alliance take its first steps, he knew that the Council's greatest fear had been realized. Change had come to the galaxy, and this time it would never be stopped.